I just got done watching Tragic Kingdom, the fourth episode of the series of the Transformers Lexicons. We're about halfway through the season, literally halfway through the season, and it's about an hour. It almost appeared that it was an hour and 9 minutes, but it wasn't. It was that there was 9 minutes extra. The scene was already filmed, so I took that out. It's an hour, a little over an hour. And thoroughly enjoyable episode. It cracks a few jokes. It's sort of, the ending is sort of changed from the story because it would have been more talking and explaining things. And it's best to show not tell in that case, because there was a lot of telling. And what that basically means is don't narrate a scene all the way through. When you do a scene, show some of the action that's going on in the scene. These mush stories have been a lot of the characters going through the motions narrating a scene, yes, but they're plastic, so you're kind of limited what you can actually do with characters and such. I don't know if it's exceptionally clear in the story, but the teaser kind of opened up the J-Axis idea. We have a J-Axis toy, J-Axis, and didn't use him. But if you watch the story all the way through, it's clear that once Galvatron catches Primary in the story, then he made all that shit up. He was just like, I made that up. I just wanted to catch you. He didn't say that specifically, but he says it later. And the other ones say they're making stuff up. So yeah, that's not a plot hole. That's part of his deception. He's a Decepticon. He can make up stuff. There might be a J-Axis character later on, but not in this episode. No. The Requiem Blaster stuff, a little confusing, and the commentary. And I'm commenting on the previous episode, of course, before we go on to I believe, the Nadirak gate is next, I think. I think that's the one that's next. Nadirak gate. And then the porthole, and then the two of the finale, yeah. So we have, so this one has the Requiem Blaster mentioned offhandedly in it. Not in the script originally, but there were blasters and guns and sharpshooters and things mentioned. The Starscream Base is a painting from a previous thing that's just slapped up there. Oh, there's a O'Neill cylinder thing in space. They blew up. Thinking that the base must be a kind of an orbital facility of some kind, that it's not on a planet. It's sort of hovering over the planet, which is interesting. Because not all of them would be on a planet. So they call it the planet, but it's a base hovering over the planet. It's nondescript. It's supposed to be the Exiles planet from pre-IDW, before IDW did it. It would be the Exiles planet in the UK comics and the other one, which is vaguely mentioned and is called something else there. Rakuten or something. And it doesn't matter because we don't meet any of the Exiles in the story. But the Requiem Blaster thing, that goes back to G1. That isn't directly what they called it in G1, but that's what I called it in G1. Back in the 80s, we've been doing these fan films since I was a teenager, and it was like 15 or 16. The Trans series, the Transformers series, was done because there weren't enough episodes of the show. I couldn't get enough of 100 episodes of season. So I was like, I got to do more because there's not enough episodes before the movie came out. It's 86, right? So movie came out March of 86 and didn't do very well when it first ran, actually. Although my friends and I saw it repeatedly over and over again to the point that we could have literally cited lines from the entire script of Transformers movie. But yes, we weren't in it. We just referenced it. But the Requiem Blaster was something that Skyfire and the Trans stories had. But if you go back to G1, it's the weapon that Wheeljack built, stopped the Decepticons, and the Autobots had to take it apart because the Decepticons were going to steal it. So they both weapons. It's kind of like that Orville episode that just aired. They built a super weapon to stop the Kalon robots, and they had to destroy it because they got a hold of it, or the enemy got a hold of it. Other enemy got a hold of it. She's the one. It was a similar Requiem Blaster idea, so we held off on the Orville episode review until after releasing this one, because we knew that they were both kind of going to be dealing with a similar blaster. Let's say. But yes, and then they were very different, as it turns out, so it didn't matter. But you never know. So the Requiem Blaster, it's like a fusion cannon, but it's a Requiem Blaster. So yeah, there's the it's equivalent to it. Yeah, and Jetfire used it to destroy the Decepticons of the Pact in the story. But in the G1 episode, the Autobots had to blow it up. Megatron was always coming up with a new weapon, and they made one. And it wasn't the Immobilizer. That was a different one. It was something like that, though. So it's referenced. It was something different. It was a blaster, laser gun blaster cannon thing they got a hold of. But it was the Requiem Blaster, and there's other things that were introduced later in the Japanese continuity, the Sky Boom Shield and the Star Saber. Star Saber was actually an Optimus Prime variant at some point, not a sword. It was a guy, Star Saber, guy, triple robot merged guy thing, Star Saber, in the far off 2020s in the story. We don't have one, or he would show up at this point and say like, "Oh, Star Saber." Yeah, they've done a few reissues of him, but he's way too expensive. So yeah. So going over this the episode of there's some things that were a little odd. The episode works; it's fine. There's nothing you need to go back and redo. It's a character study of Ultra Magnus and his girlfriend Primary, and it has elements of that T.L. Aileron story, Paper Flowers, indirectly, because the Lexicons people that published the Lexicons website, T.L. Aileron was one of the guys, so he influenced the other stories. He was part of that other, so they included Magnus's girlfriend, and this other person, Chromia 311, said, "I can write a better story about Magnus's girlfriend than you, call it Primary," and so she did, and it was better. It is a better story than the T.L. Aileron's one. The T.L. Aileron's one went off in another direction. It was really dark and twisted, and we don't need to do that. This is more of a comedy show. We don't need to do the horror stuff, really. I don't think any of this stuff is really horror, unless it's fun horror, like splatter comedy. But there we can't break any of the Transformers anyway, so it isn't really. It's a comedy, it's a parody film. So yeah, they were new each other. They did things. Artemis Prime knew stuff, and they knew each other. So we don't need to pay homage to them, but we are doing it anyway. We don't know who these other people directly were, nor have we had any contact with them. Really. But we felt that we should give at least credit to these anonymous and some semi-anonymous people in our story, saying this is based on a story by this person. The story would have been 3 hours long. We cut it down to an hour, so we cut out about 2/3 of it. And it would have been a lot of talking and a lot of epic things going on. None of which forwarded the story, granted. This person did not take directly. That's some creative writing. They clearly knew the characters well, but there's always, if you can write a story that's shorter and more succinct and catches the reader, it's better than a long drawn out story that doesn't catch the reader at all. There were elements of this story. There was about an hour of good material, and I used it. And the ending is completely ours. The original ending of the storybook was actually darker and more grim and more up to Aileron's territory. In the original story, Primary basically dies. Galvatron doesn't come back, but Primary dies, and Cyclonus becomes leader of the Decepticons. She sacrifices herself to destroy the Decepticon Matrix and leaves. The other thing about the Decepticon Matrix being crushed and then rebuilt as the Autobot Matrix was Silly Kelly's idea. Having the idea where you have we have to explain away this repository thing that we went about last chapter. As if it was going to be this big deal, and the author didn't talk about it at all. So basically, we had to say, all right, well, we kind of got to solve that story right away. So how about one of them says, I have a broken thing in my chest that isn't doing anything. And another one says, oh, he could have been lying. And another one says, oh, the Autobot Matrix imparts wisdom. The Decepticon Matrix, because it's broken, doesn't do anything. Or it doesn't do it right or something. And it was originally a slave control device. Sort of like a in a hard drive, a slave and controller on the battle hard, like a game console thing. Yeah, so controlling that. And of course they used solder, which was funny. But yes, no, you wouldn't, not a robot. So yeah, yeah. So the ending was more grim and messed up, and then she comes back as a demigod at the last minute, and sort of ends with her kind of as a demigod walking away saying, "I will lead you now." That would have been stupid. So, but yeah, we just didn't want to do that. That was no. So some elements of that are there. This is Solus Prime, Arise, and right, Solus Prime, and she stopped the blast that would have blown up the base. But she's messed up, but she's not dead. So at some point, if they want to bring her, they won't bring her back. But if they wanted to. So like in many of these other mini stories we've done, the first 4 stories are sort of a unit, and you watch them together. You watch them together. So you got Facing Up and the Artemis Incident and yeah, the other ones. What have we got? Facing Up, the Artemis Incident. Facing Up is the Prison Planet one. The Artemis Incident is the one with Artemis. It was another kind of a Mary Sue, the sort of self-effacing Mary Sue, one that isn't too sure of herself. Then there's the Obscure Mission, Introduction to Primary, and the sequel, The Tragic Kingdom. Yeah, so The Tragic Kingdom. And yes, they do reference the No Doubt song in it. Calvatron's on a No Doubt song, really? This was written by some emo in the 2000s. Probably was. Because Galvatron is totally emo and clearly metal. But yeah, he totally is. But he's kind of a dick because he kind of killed her earlier on and broke her. It's messed up. But yeah, I deliberately didn't want to have a Chromia in the Chromia stories. So weird. That would have been too much. But yeah, the Magnus thing referencing Aaron's. There's a little bit of Aaron's in there. All the way through the first 4 here. Into the second 4, because he was an influence on the other writers. They read his stuff and did their own in the early 2000s. So a lot of those are from that. We don't have any later ones after 2006 because I didn't really want to do later G1 ones after that for that series. This is the halfway point. You're going to see some other stories that are all between 2003 and 2006. And I believe maybe 2008. No, I think it's still 2006. Yeah. So they're gonna be fun. Yeah, and yeah, the Requiem Blaster was officially canonized in the American Transformers through the Japanese Transformers, Micron Daihatsu, and better known as and Micron Defender, and better known as Armada. The Minicon stories. Micron Daihatsu. Minicons, the Armada saga, the Unicron trilogy, and Unicron, Cybertron, yeah, Cybertron and Energon. Energon was second. Energon over there was called Planet Key Adventure, the Bion Planet Key, or that was the third one. That was Cybertron, wasn't it? Yeah, Cybertron was the Planet Keys. Cyber Key Adventure, which is a better title. The middle one was Cybertron. That was called the Unicrons or something. It had nothing to do with... Yeah, that was a different one. That was Superlink. That's right, Superlink. Yeah, it was called Superlink over there. Yeah, it's a weird one. They stuck them together. They were transformed into duocons. Basically, the whole thing was duocons. Not the best of ideas. It's early Combiner Wars. Yeah, so you have your thing here. We didn't want to do much of the combining stuff in this. There are references to the Constructicons, and you don't see them in this. I thought that having more than the dozen or so people on one side and the dozen or so on the other just makes it too cluttered, and you can't concentrate on characters. I liked that it was an Ultra Magnus story, these two parts, by Chromia. That they were Ultra Magnus and his girlfriend, and done in a better way than Aaron's. I mean, he keeps mentioning Aaron's, but yeah, we have some of his stuff we copied off the Lexicon, but we can't use any of it because it's ultra violent and scary, and well, not scary, but it's not fun. He got all angsty and dark after Paper Flowers, which was his only comedy, apparently. But this one, yeah. Granted, the next two episodes, the Nadirak Gate and the Porthole, are about some kind of space bridge. So there we go. Two different space bridges. And then there's the finale. Up from Darkness 1 and 2. Oh, this is going to be a guy named Aileron, instead of Aileron. It should be Aileron, but I think this person's name is Allison, so they're like Ali Ryan. So they mean Aileron, but Ali Ryan. Aileron is a Transformer. I think he's a pretender. So it's not like it's somebody that they invented. There's a story about Aileron. Nadirak Gate, about a space gate. Episode 5. Episode 6 is The Porthole by K.D. Cooper. These were both 2003. Portal. K.D. Cooper might get Leon Balls and Roadkill to direct. Maybe. I don't know. March 2022. We get to 7 and 8. Two-parter called Back from Emptiness 1 and 2. Featuring the short stories by K.D. Cooper, Blood and Emptiness and Closure, and the other one featuring Cryptic Pasts by Myrtlith and You Can't Go Home Again by Jazzy. Not to be confused with any other Jazzies, it's a common name. Yes, that's all I need to say about that. We don't know who it is. It's the one that wrote the Sibling Rivalry episode, so she comes back to that. Sibling Rivalry, which was we changed into the Rakshi story instead, because Jazz doesn't have a sister that's called Jazzy. That's silly. Sillier than this, yes. Just like Lona said of the last episode, this is a silly, silly story. Now, before we begin with the Nadirak Gate, the next episode of Lexicons, it's also on FanfictionNet, and we have found the author. This one, she goes by two different aliases. Dragoness Electric is someone else that posted some of her stuff, as well as some other ones. But her actual pen name on the internet is Alexandra Spar. Good Transformer name, Spar. Yeah, so that's a real name. And yeah, so this story is 2003, and it's topical because it's about an alien pathogen that affects the Transformers. And Aileron shows up as some kind of a medical robot or something. So maybe that's where we can throw in this guy. Maybe we can just say, well, it just looks like him. Oh, maybe that's when he shows up. Yeah, alien pathogen. Alien pathogen. With a Nadirak Gate. And yeah, I thumbed through most of it, and it's about 100 pages, and it's yeah, we're gonna do it. Starscream's in it too. So it's an alternate universe where they exist, but what I can't find is it's supposed to be a Beast Wars crossover, and where are the beasts at? When do they show up? Just some Predacons or Maximals, but I don't see them in here. Maybe her own Maximals? Oh, the Nadirak Gate. When to be adapted in some random fan film from 20 years later. Well, it takes that long for a script to get adapted to screen. She likes character development and, well, back then, 20 years ago. 22 years ago. Character development, medical drama, and has done all kinds of then existing cartoon fanfics, yeah, Invader Zim, Gargoyles, bunch of other stuff. but fanfics. Yeah, she's done a lot of fanfics. 40-some stories. So she's famous under the two later names. But when back then she was this. So yeah, cool. Looks like this one will be either Kelly Bullock's again or Clint Cowpoke, which. And yeah, so let's do it. It's not 150 minutes. Nadirak Gate. Yeah. So in the credits, you can list the real name or the Aileron. We were guessing the name was Aileron was the name of the girl, but no, it was Spar. So yeah. Anyway, yeah. So don't worry about it if you're out there. We're not going to screw it up. Let me do that again. This is going to be real brief. We got to the middle section here, in the middle of the thing. The middle of the yeah, you can't tell, but it's the middle. It's the middle. It's the halfway point, 50 pages. And yeah, so yeah. It's taken forever. It always takes forever to get to the middle, and then it's like a home run thing to the end, a home stretch thing to the end. Kind of like, okay, yeah, tomorrow and the next day. Will we get 2 days to finish what amounts to the last 30 minutes, basically? Because it's usually an hour-long story. So just the next 30 minutes, that's all we ask. Yeah, it's usually Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, so we're I don't think we're actually behind, though. I think actually to sneak it in, and we're not actually behind. The footage of the Robotech thing that was done earlier was already posted as the Robotech behind the scenes thing because it had nothing to do with this. So it was already posted. So that's not part of the making of. It's just a thing on it because there's no Robotech in this. Yeah, so I guess what's going on is they're in War for Cybertron universe. So Starscream is still around, and there's a version of Megatron that's different, Prime that's different, and they are. So the whole episode is in a different, a whole different. I guess these 4 remaining episodes of the season are almost like it's a new season, because that's kind of the way it's blocked. The Aileron, the character that wrote this, is a type of Mary Sue. That's the kind that's self-effacing, similar to the Artemis Prime character. Similar to Draconis Prime in many ways. And she looks like a Jaxus, but shorter. So they're probably just assuming she's Jaxus-like, or comes from Jaxus's planet, which is. It's a Jaxus figure, but for a current Jaxus figure this year. But it's not him. So it still could be the guy that tried to kill Galvatron in the previous story. They thought it looked like Jaxus. Still could be him. Still could be referenced. Not that it couldn't be, but why would... I'm not sure whether she would do that or not. Not intentionally. Maybe not. And it may not be that this space plague in this story is the space plague from the other story, which the other seasons were all about. Secretly, there's a space plague that was caused by the Earth humans and stuff, and it was caused by robotechnology and stuff, and finding invid stuff they shouldn't have because the universe was changed. And so in this one, yeah, it's a COVID parable. Yeah, it was too soon. We did it anyway. But it's not a main central story to that until this episode, in which there's a space plague that's doing stuff, messing with them. This person likes medical drama and stuff, so sure. This person was listed as Aileron, but her real name is Alexandra Spar. And as far as we know, there's nothing new on her. It's been years. And that she's the TF board's person. And she does have an archive of this story as well. So, yeah, I'm sure she would be flattered that there's a fan film done of her Aileron character being produced right now. That's awesome. Yeah, and we have followed the script. We've only left out the flashbacks. So should be all right. Yeah, so Did you change a little bit of where Prime gets awakened to make it more dramatic? We awakened him about halfway through this the first 20 minutes, instead of having him just be there in the first 20 minutes. It was cooler that way. It's like, okay, what was he doing over there? Yeah, so there's well, it's maybe 20 minutes. Yeah, another 20. Well, probably more like 15 when you put this together, and then another 15. It's the first half hour. So, yeah. And that's it for the evening. So there you go. The Nadirak Gate. I was going to Nadirak Gate earlier, but no, it's Nadirak Gate. And I'm sure it's not a thinly veiled riff on Iraq, because it's a K, and there's no Q in it. So it's Nadirak Gate. I'm sure it's not anything to do with that. And I'm sure the plague thing is not. It's kind of a little more like a bioweapon than a plague. So maybe she's doing a WMD thing for robots, which is different from the COVID. Yeah. So it wasn't a bioweapon. That's stupid. Yeah. So but they were probably thinking of that. WMDs back in the day. Biovirus that got out. Yeah, it's who knows. Anyway, so yeah, and I think all the current strains of that COVID thing, they should call them COVID-22, because it's a little later. It's different. 19 is just the year. Those of us that have been to anime conventions were already exposed to it years ago, when it was COVID 03 and 04. But anyway, had a vaccine anyway. Anyway, so to the space plague. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, space plague. Yeah, space plague. Yeah. Note, story-wise, several pages. Note, story-wise, making up. Several pages were omitted from this story. Some flashbacks for several pages. Where let's just say we're not going to film any of these flashbacks. They don't make sense. You get to see the side of the Guardians on the other side of the gate deciding that they're going to attack Cybertron, I guess. Then there's a bar scene that happens later on. It doesn't need to be in the story at all, because I guess this person is just a real sucker for the Cheers show back in the day, and possibly some newer variant of it. And I had to have her have a talk with a guy in a bar, just because, sure, got to go to a pub. Surprised he didn't call it a pub. This is British. Oh, that's weird. And I would have called it a pub. I said he's in the pub. Robo-pub. Yeah. But apparently the beer wasn't that good, or the whiskey. Space whiskey. But we don't need a bar scene. So we're going to skip to literally almost another 6 pages. And end up on 59, where we're going to address Aileron and... Yeah, they kind of also imply that some of them banged each other, but because it's slashy, but we didn't leave that out too. Yeah, she doesn't have sex with her patients. It's funny, but no, we're not going to put that in there. And I threw in the line about the Care Bear, because I thought it would be funny. It fit very well. Also the data, the fully functional like data. That should have been in there. You want to leave, you're free to go. It is canon that I suggested for the Netflix show that if Galvatron met Megatron, it should happen, that their first meeting should be, and they put it in the episode. He goes, Galvatron goes, "You should not trust me. I won't." Because, yeah, he wouldn't trust him. Anyway, so yeah. Done it. Hammered through it. Here on Saturday. Well, now it's early Sunday morning. It's after midnight. So, yeah, that's almost, it's almost midnight. So I haven't on Sunday morning yet. All Saturday. Try to get through it, even though all kinds of other stuff happened. We managed to get through the episode. We're going to check the dailies. Check the dailies on this one. And, yeah, so there wasn't a lot of behind the scenes, really, making of, really, on this one. Fairly straightforward. But several, the second half was quicker because a lot of it we couldn't use. A lot of it was flashbacks to other characters and having them meet. The ultimately use Matrix energy at one point on the bad guys, and then sort of call their bluff anyway. So what I did was I sort of restructured the ending in my own way so that it was a little more like a movie and a little more thematic. There's not a lot of action. So we basically sent a crew of Autobots to the gate that they're at to see whether the bad guys were a threat. Otherwise, go and see whether your enemy's a threat. As in the story, the enemy was claiming they had a planet killer thing and they're going to aim it at Cybertron. And they kind of didn't believe it. So, yeah, they were going with their gut instinct. They didn't believe it because planet killer weapons are very rare. The Matrix killed Unicron, so they did mention that. I put that in there. I don't know if the story did, though, but I mentioned that in there. So, the Matrix could kill the gun thing, if they had to. So they sent Prime to the gun thing. And basically he determined that the gun wasn't armed, and that it couldn't do that. So they were bluffing. Megatron already figured it out. He was like, they're bluffing. So the threat of them, the bad guys, the Amaranth. Yeah, the Amaranth. Amaranth is a plant. It's kind of reddish plant with white and red blossoms. It's kind of funny. It's also a Transformers reference. There's an Amaranth. The original character was supposed to be red in color, more similar to the other ones. So, in this one, Road Rage is playing the Amaranth colored character. It's sort of its own universe too. It's sort of we're seeing the Netflix characters from after the show was over in the present on Cybertron or on this Feller's Gate thing, because they had Stargates and space bridges and that. Yep, and our connection to that one was like we learned about the scene where Megatron was going to meet Galvatron. The connection to that was, well, what you got to say there is he goes, you shouldn't trust me. You shouldn't, That's what they should say, because neither of them would trust each other. Not a lot of extra stuff to mention. It would be odd. I guess we're going to have to dedicate the episode to Shell Nichols from Star Trek. But she had nothing to do with this, really. She passed away, so yeah, reference that. Except that she was in Silly Trek Chimera, so probably should do that. Sure. The bluff, the Captain Kirk type bluff at the end. It's self-contained. It's a story. It exists. It's the Nadirak Gate. I'm going to keep the name and the title because it's an interesting title. The Nadirak Gate. Not Iraq, but not spelled that way even. It's spelled Nadir or Nadirak. It's more like Kodak or Hordak. But yeah. A lot of part 2 was not used. In fact, this whole 10 pages here was. It didn't. Yeah, they mentioned that at the very end, the minister guy came back and he's like, and we weren't really going to attack Cybertron. No, yeah. They were overpowered by the Transformers or something, and I thought that's kind of the Matrix or something. No, it's a bluff. It's more punchy if it's a bluff. It's also more punchy that they go to the planet to investigate, to the gate to investigate, only to discover that the threat wouldn't have been much anyway, because they were all sick from the plague. It got them. So they were like, oh, well, there's no point in... Yeah, they can't fire the weapon even if they wanted to. They're all messed up. So, and they gave them the cure because they're Autobots. that's in there. It's just that it moved things around. It's in there. Condensed it. So this is a novel. It's getting long. It's long enough. It's it's the story. It doesn't need to be 2 hours. It's an hour probably. And that's all it needs to be. That's all it needs to be, an hour. The next one is The Portal, which is actually quite different. It doesn't have a plague in it. And is it the plague that Soundwave caught with this computer virus earlier? Not exactly. And it's not COVID either. It was actually written 20 years ago, so it can't be. Unless it's the first COVID 2002 version of it. Yep. Alexander Spartan. There was another guy that wrote some... There's an Alexander and his friend who wrote a lot of stuff about Amaranth, the Transformer planet. There's another guy. I don't think it's the same person. I think this person is somebody different, unless it's a trans woman and she became a chick, which would be, relevant in the 21st century. Cool. So, trans woman. Probably not. It's probably a coincidence. Because Nadirak is her idea, but Amaranth is not. Amaranth is UK Comics like planet. It's not IDW though, interestingly enough. Some names were changed around. There was a cameo by Ultra Magnus and Hot Rod and other people, but no, in this universe, Ultra Magnus is dead. In the War for Cybertron cartoon Netflix universe, he was killed and his head was removed. Had his head. Megatron had his head. That is mentioned in it. I guess it's probably going to be an outtake now because we redid that scene to make it make more sense. Followed the script a little more. Make more sense. Yeah, so the threat in the story is not really a threat. She knew the character development. Did pretty well. Megatron and Starscream pretty well. The decision was made to use my Jihaxis figure as the lead in here. So Jihaxis is playing someone else, playing this Aileron. Blame Aileron. And it's revealed that she's a relative of him. Don't know what the relation is. Relative. And it was also revealed at the last minute of the story that she is the one that was in the other universe and attacked Galvatron. And they thought it was him, but it wasn't. It was actually somebody that looked like him. You figure Transformers probably have similar model types. Different generations and stuff. Different, slightly different, but similar model types. Sure. Well, it's now 12:02 and I'm done doing this. I'm going to do this one. Next one is The Portal. Is it the Goatsy? The Portal. This one is the Nadirak Gate. Black. So there's lots of time gates in here. Dark matter. Or is that a guy called Dark Matter? It says it's 150 pages. It's not going to be. It's not going to be that long. Nope. Oh, Back from Emptiness 1 and 2. It's the last finale. Yeah. They're all about the same thickness. 110 some pages. So yeah. I think Back from Emptiness 1 and 2 were actually like ensemble stories. But yeah. Well, try not to drive everyone up the wall. Lexicons. Having nothing to do with anybody named Lex. Yes, Lexicons having nothing to do with anyone named Lex. Lexicons. Okay. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Oh. Fade, I think. Well. Okay, Nadirak. The Nadirak Gate will also be directed by Kelly Moss. Looks like. Looks like Cowpoke. Let's see. Okay, this is going to be real brief. We finally got to the middle section of this here. It always, yeah, huh. $69. Anyway. What's white balance? Still not quite there. Now it is. No, it's still a little yellow. There we go. That's better. Alright, so Screamer and Buddy. Is Decepticons. Screamer and Thrust. Decepticons. Thundercracker originally. I don't know what. I don't know how that would have worked because he got blown up, and they referenced Sharkticons and Critisons in it. So I was like, when does this take place? Oh. Well, now that we have a multiverse, it works. Okay, and action. Find you here. I think it's picking up that weird. Oh, I find you here. You should not, because he's a Decepticon. Yeah. Certainly, yeah, different. Tried to keep everything together, the characters. Didn't work. So, yeah. Really not going to ramble on too much about this. I mean, there's Nadirak. Nadirak, yeah. Nadirak Gate. Yeah, so it's spelled. Yeah.